morning and happy Sabbath. Today's scripture reading comes from the book of 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God had not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. May the Lord add a blessing to the readers of His word.
Well, those that were here for dinner with the doctor, Dr. Ramirez is no stranger. I'm so glad we're able to get him back and talk to us again today. So with no further ado, Dr. Ramirez, welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. That was some beautiful piece of music, isn't it? See, God has given each one of us talents, and when we share them, we become a bigger blessing, to the people around us. I'm just coming back from a camp meeting from Maine, they have a nice summer there. In fact, this morning I slept in New Jersey. I came driving from New Jersey to here this morning. And today's topic, it's a little continuation to the dinner with the doctor. I'm going to be citing a little bit there of the research that I do. So if anybody wants to access that original research, you can go there to any of these pages and you can access that. And the good news is that we have a book to read. If you want to learn further about this, contact Lillian Torres. She has a few copies of this book, and you can get a hold of this book. This book, is like an infographic. The whole book is nice and entertaining. The other day, my daughter was babysitting, and once the child that she was babysitting got a hold of this book, she said that it became her favorite book. So interesting and colorful and so forth. So I also remind you of the resources that we have at the Adventist Whole Health Network. You can visit our website, awhn.org, and go ahead and select there where it says newsletter if you want to sign up to the newsletter and you want to learn all the things that are happening and so forth. So we live in a world that has multiple challenges. And to God, this is not something new. In fact, when they asked Jesus, what's going to be the condition of this world as we get closer and closer to the climax of this world, he started to describe certain things that would be happening. We find that in Matthew 24. We go to chapter 7, some of those characteristics of this time and age. Number one, he starts saying, For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Question, anybody heard of a recent war somewhere here on this planet Earth? Man, this Jewish, against Gaza, Chinese against India, Russians against Ukrainian, just before of our eyes. You open the newspaper and you read these types of conflicts, and not only the ones happening, but the ones that are also brewing there as the economic pressures and political situations change. Another characteristic is that there will be famines. Is there famines on planet Earth today? Sadly, yes. Today we have the technology to produce enough food for everybody to eat on planet Earth. And sadly, there are people that are going to bed hungry day after day after day. This report there from the UN identifying 20 hunger spots around the world. Another characteristic is there will be earthquakes in many places. And some people may say, well, doctor, but we have always had earthquakes on planet Earth. And yes, we have, but not with the intensity that we're having them now. Look at this interesting statistic. If you go to a database of earthquakes and you check, for example, from 1900s to 1910, you will see that there was 3 earthquakes 6.0 or more intense. Now, if you go and check from 1990 to the year 2000, there were 943 earthquakes 6.0 and above. See, this is like a female that is about to give birth. If you ever witness that, you will see that they have these contractions, and the contractions starts getting more stronger and more often. And the baby is going to come out without the doctor, with the doctor, or in spite of the doctor. That baby is coming out. And that is what we are witnessing before us. We are seeing that things that had always happened, now we see them more often and more, with a higher intensity and so forth. And not only on one particular thing, but over the whole spectrum of different things, from natural disasters to so forth. And then there's another characteristic there. It says that there will be what? Pestilences. Anybody heard of any pestilence recently that hit us? COVID-19, isn't it? Something that literally, stopped this planet Earth. And it's interesting that we can see those things as signs of the times. Book Acts of the Apostles, there are in the world today many who close their eyes to the evidences that Christ has given to warn men of his coming. They seek to quiet all apprehension, while at the same time, what's happening? The signs of the end, what happening? Are rapidly fulfilling, and the world is hastening to the time when the Son of Man shall be revealed in the clouds of heaven. And today we're going to learn about something very present situation, and this is called the emerging infectious diseases. Emerging infectious diseases are 2 big groups of infectious problems that we can divide. Number 1, as diseases that in the past we thought we had conquered, and they're coming back. One example of this would be tuberculosis. See, when we discover the medication to stop tuberculosis, cases started going down, 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 but the presence of different new diseases such as AIDS started to increase the amount of tuberculosis that we see, and now some of that tuberculosis is even starting to become resistant to the medication, and you get on all these kinds of complications. So, number 1, diseases we had conquered and they're coming back. Or, number 2 in that group are diseases that are completely new, that we had never heard about them before. An example of that is the famous COVID-19. The reason why it says the number 19 there is because in 2019 is the first time that it presented itself. Let me give you an example of one of those emerging infectious diseases that was completely new. If we go back to 1981, How do you know you're in 1981? When Ronald Reagan was president. That's when it was 1981. You know, the Centers for Disease Control here in America puts out on a regular basis this report telling you about the situations of diseases that are happening, if there's some sort of new disease or new finding in the realm of public health that they want the scientists to be aware of. You can actually sign up for this report for free. It's called the Mmwr Report. So in that report, in 1981, in July of that year, they reported that there was a small group of homosexual males that were having a very strange type of pneumonia. We don't see this pneumonia very often. As doctors, you see pneumonia, in the hospital and so forth, but you don't see this specific subtype of pneumonia. Did you know that this report is the first time it was documented in a scientific way what today became the epidemic of AIDS? Before this time, nobody had ever heard about AIDS. And this has sprouted and grown all over the world to the point that 36 million people have died as a result of AIDS. Today we're going to learn where AIDS came from. Yes, promiscuous sexual behavior, IV drug use have fired up this thing all over the place, but where did it came from in the first place? So we're talking about many new emerging infectious diseases, from COVID-19 to HIV to Ebola to West Nile, even Lyme disease. If you remember, this was something that was not present. It is a new disease, a new emerging infectious disease. One of the tools that we can use to find the origin of diseases is a tool by the name of medical anthropology. We're able to trace back, using tools like genetics and so forth, we're able to trace back diseases to their origin. Let's see a few common diseases where they came from. One of them is smallpox. Nowadays, you don't hear very much about it because we have a vaccination that was able to stop this problem very much. But where did it come from? It came originally from camels. See, camels originally had something called the camel pox, and the close proximity of humans with the camels, and sometimes the consumption of its meat, caused this virus to mutate and end up affecting the humans. And once we had the human version, then it was able to spread to other humans from other humans. Another example is the whooping cough, or also known as pertussis. Again, a problem you don't see very often today because of vaccination, but in the past, this was a huge problem. You had this cough, these fits of cough that would make you purple because you couldn't even breathe for so much coughing. And where did it come from? It came from pigs. And there's a reason why in Leviticus 11 it says, don't eat this meat. In fact, it even says, don't even touch this animal. Okay? This is not the only disease that came from pigs. There's many other diseases that pigs have helped to spread out. Now, if you go to history, you will see that when Christopher Columbus came to the American continent, there were not many of the animals that are here today. The Europeans, Christopher Columbus, brought with him pigs, cows, goats, sheep, horses, chickens. These animals were not in the American continent. In fact, Christopher Columbus came, he found the route and everything, and when he came back the second time, he brought a little group of pigs, and after he did that, he actually caused a huge epidemic in the American continent of pig flu. And we know that many people perish of diseases that the Europeans brought to the American continent. For example, Cortez, which was one of the conquerors that came a few years later after Christopher Columbus had come, when by the time that he came, half of the population had perished in the American continent due to the diseases that the Europeans were bringing to the American continent. Now, why was that the flow of diseases? In fact, just few exceptions was diseases that the Americans sent to the rest of the world. Most of the diseases were coming and affecting the natives here. One of those exceptions of diseases that the Europeans brought to Europe was syphilis. Syphilis originated here in the American continent. And in fact, when it arrived into Europe, they started blaming each other. You know, the French started to blame the Portuguese, and the Portuguese started to blame the Italians and so forth. But the reality was the Spanish, the ones that brought it and started spreading it there all over the place. In fact, just a few years later, by 1618, the population of the Indians in Mexico, the Aztec Indians, had decreased from 18 million to 1.6 million. Tremendous devastation that this was causing. And that's why if you read the story, you would see that it was a small army, the one that was able to conquer tremendous military powerhouses back then, but they were tremendously decimated by the diseases that the Europeans had brought here. Another disease very well identified is typhoid fever. Typhoid fever naturally lives in the intestine of the chicken. In fact, many of the eggs that you buy in the store, outside of the eggs have typhoid fever. So, before the Europeans brought the chickens to this continent, there was no chickens, therefore there was no typhoid fever here in this continent. Another one is human measles, a very dangerous disease. Again, we don't see this very much today because of vaccinations. The amount of this disease, has almost disappeared. But it has killed 200 million people in its history. This one came from the close contact of human and sheep with the cows. As they were close together, it was able to jump into the humans. Another one is influenza. Influenza came from the ducks. Now, just think a little bit about it. Do you think that the ducks that are flying there in the sky are the ones that infected us? No, they're too far. I had to have these ducks next to my face so this duck, could cough or sneeze and then send its secretions to me, and then it could infect me. Okay? I had to domesticate this animal for that infection to happen. And then once it came in our system, then we were able to spread it out to other people. And in this book, excellent book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, Jared Diamond does a good job describing that phenomena. And Jared Diamond, as he explores the subject, tells us that 95% of the natives in the American continent disappear as a result of those diseases that the Europeans brought to the Americas. And one of the reasons why he describes it in this chapter, the little gift of livestock, he exposes how the difference was that the people in the American continent didn't do animal husbandry. See, the Europeans have been doing this for long periods of time, and these had caused all kinds of problems. In fact, the people in the continent of America did eat some of these, wild animals. For example, they would eat deer. But they never kept the deer like the Europeans did in an enclosed space so that they could be close contact with them. Therefore, there was no plagues here in the American continent. But because there was not many of those animals that caused these problems, no pigs, therefore no pertussis, no chickens, no typhoid fever, and so forth. But if you read the history of the Europeans, you would see how the Europeans would get hit over and over by plagues. Let me show you some of those numbers. The plague of Justinian, killing 10,000 people every day, tremendously devastating. The Black Death, killing half of the population of the whole continent of Europe. The Italian plague, 1/3 of all the inhabitants of Venetia perished as a result of this. And it was on a regular basis that they would get hit over and over by disease due to their customs of animal husbandry. Now, the story started to change once we arrived to the 20th century as principles such as hygiene principles started to be spread out throughout the population. Now people learned they had to wash their hands. They started to put the toilets outside of, possible contamination and so forth. Also, the advent of vaccines started to decrease tremendously the amount of infectious diseases. And finally, the advent of antibiotics. Before, you had infections and you just couldn't stop them. The infection would keep on growing and growing and growing. The person would perish. And now when we had the antibiotics, we were able to stop many of the common killers by prescribing the right medication. So the amount of infectious diseases started to decrease dramatically. In fact, in the 1950s and 1960s, experts like this expert in virus, Dr. McFarlane, he said, it is almost the right of something that has passed into history, talking about infectious diseases. Dr. McFarlane didn't come to the year 2020 to see that this did not pass into history, isn't it? And how infectious diseases could create a disaster. So something interesting happened. See, in the past, there was tremendous amounts of infectious diseases. And due to those interventions I just told you a minute ago, the amount of infectious diseases started to decrease dramatically in our world. But something started to change. Around the 1950s and around the 1960s, there was a resurgence of infectious diseases. These emerging infectious diseases started to go up and up in numbers. And I have a theory why this happened. See, I'm originally from Mexico. And when I was in my 20s, I moved to Norway. I speak Norwegian because I lived there for many years. And when I got to Norway, I realized that Norway was very different from Mexico. Not only the weather, but the whole system, And there was no corruption. Things worked very well, very functional country. The economics, the money is distributed very equally among all the population, and very nice services and so forth. So I asked myself, why is Norway so prosperous? And that's when I went to the local library to read the history of Norway. And I was shocked, because I found out that the same problems of, abuse of power, corruption, and dysfunctionality used to be the daily thing in Norway. But Norway got something that Mexico didn't. Norway embraced the message of somebody by the name of Martin Luther, which transformed the mentality of the people in Norway, and everybody there embraced this message, and it created a transformation at the level of their behavior. In fact, these people are so honest. I remember the other day, I went a few years ago when I was living there, I went shopping. I got a bunch of things from the store some of them were actually valuable. And my phone rang when I was about to go in the car, and I left the things in the street. I drove home, and then an hour later, I remember, I said, oh no, I forgot my things. I never loaded them in the car. So I drove back, and believe me, the things were still there. Now, try that in Latin America. Let's see how many minutes it lasts, Now, I've been to 88 countries on planet Earth, and I've seen this with my own eyes. You show me the countries that receive that message, and I'm going to show you the most prosperous countries on planet Earth. You have Canada and America, you have Iceland, England, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Holland, Germany. And then to the influence of the English, you have the colony of Singapore, tremendously prosperous place. You have Hong Kong, another very prosperous place. Sadly, it now was handed out to the Chinese and is going downhill before our eyes. Then you have England, and then through England you have Australia and New Zealand. Very prosperous countries. And the problem was that these countries, the prosperity that they receive as a result of that new way of behaving and thinking, nowadays it is being replaced before our eyes. And the book of Proverbs talks about this. In the book of Proverbs it says, don't make me so poor that I need to steal and I'm going to dishonor your name. But at the same time, don't make me too rich that I may forget about you. And that's what we're seeing. Now, that philosophy that brought tremendous prosperity to this country and others is being replaced by secularism, postmodernism, agnosticism, atheism, as people forget where their prosperity came from. And we see that atheistic type of belief growing and growing by numbers worldwide, and especially those blessed countries that God blessed so much. And we can see that effect that change of belief has. This is the book, The Great Controversy. Satan works through the elements also to garner his harvest of unprepared souls. He has studied the secrets of the laboratories of nature, and he uses all his power to control the elements as far as God allows. It is God that shields his creatures and hedges them in from the power of the destroyer. But the Christian world, what have they done? They have shown contempt for the law of Jehovah, and the Lord will do just what he has declared that he would. He will withdraw his blessings from the earth and remove his protecting care from those who are rebelling against his law and teaching and forcing others to do the same. Satan has control of all whom God does not specially guard. He will bring disease and disaster until popular cities are reduced to ruin and desolation. And he continues, even now he's at work in accidents and calamities by sea and by land, in great conflagrations, in fierce tornadoes and terrific hailstorms, in tempests, floods, cyclones, tidal waves, and earthquakes. In every place and in 1,000 forms, Satan is exercising his power. And notice, he imparts to the air a deadly taint, and thousands perish by what? By the pestilence. These visitations are to become more and more frequent and disastrous. Destruction will be upon men and beasts. The earth mourneth and faded away. The haughty people do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. And that's what we see. For example, show me the most secular countries in the world. I'm going to show you where you find the most suicides on planet Earth. As you leave people empty, as you remove that spirituality, you get yourself in trouble. And in fact, instead of, following good example, we're just like Hezekiah. For example, when people come here to the United States, are we like Hezekiah, showing them just the gold and all these things, instead of showing them the God who gave us that prosperity, the God who blessed us tremendously? And this is what the sociologists call the rose effect. If you have a bush with roses and you cut down a rose, the rose still is alive, but what's going to happen to that rose? It's going to start dying when you disconnect it from the source of life. And that's what we're seeing before our eyes. Our society is breaking down by the seams, isn't it? As we are being separated from the source that brought us the prosperity in this country. And society is changing before our eyes. Let me show you from the 1950s and 1960s how things started changing dramatically in this country. For example, percentage of teenage girls who had premarital sexual relationships. Notice the tremendous increase around that point is when things started to get worse and worse and worse. Sexually transmitted diseases, having gonorrhea in young people from the ages 10 to 14, a disease that they should never have. Notice 385% more today compared to the 1950s and 60s. Single girls giving birth, a tremendous increase, 553% increase. Out of wedlock, as a percentage of all the births, notice how year by year by year by year, more and more of these numbers. Single people living together, something that was rare and uncommon, today is the most common thing, tremendous increase. Number of divorces going up, child abuse up 2,300%. Illegal drug use up 6,000%. Violent crimes up 1,000%. Suicides among teens, tremendous increase. So by the time 1975 arrived, we had 30 new diseases. We had never ever heard about them before. Let me show you an example of them. This map shows you worldwide about these emerging infectious diseases. So as you can see, it's not just one here and there. They are all over the place. And public health organizations are very worried about that tremendous increase. In this book that I have, page 17, depending on the present policies and actions, this situation is going to lead to a catastrophic storm of microbial threats. So, one of those new diseases that came to us around 1975 was a disease by the name of Lyme disease. By the way, if you ever get one of these rashes, you run to your doctor, okay? We can do a lot at the beginning stages. When this thing becomes chronic, it causes all kinds of problems. So, this disease, which is a completely new disease, now it's found in 50 states. And not only that, it's expanding to Latin America. It's going up to Canada also. And you know a little bit about how this disease, progresses. The team players here are the deer, the white-footed mouse, and the tick. So why did we got this disease? Well, as people started moving more and more to the suburbs, they started putting their homes where there was only forest. And let me ask you this question. Let's say you put a new house where there's only forest there. Who would you rather have outside your home? You want to have mountain lions? You want to have wolves? You're going to have badgers? Is this the type of animals you want outside your home? No, isn't it? Nobody wants these creatures in their backyard. So people started killing these predators. So the predators were the ones that needed to keep the populations in check. They're the ones that eat the deer and the rabbit and the mice and all these other animals. Now, if you take away those predators, now you have a tremendous increase of many of the other animals. There is more animals, therefore there is more food to the ticks. Therefore, there are much more ticks. Now, populations in the wild go to waves up and down. So when the populations start going down, now you have all these hungry ticks. Who are they going to eat? We humans, isn't it? And then the second thing that happened, we started fractionating the forest. See, if you analyze the way that animals move in the forest, there's certain natural pathways that animals like to move on. But now you put houses in those pathways. So before, the animals were trying to avoid humans, but because we are in their pathway, they come more and more often in contact with the humans. That's the origin of this disease, Lyme disease. Another example of another group of emerging infectious diseases is from Argentina. Argentina realized that people were asking for more and more meat. So as a national policy, they decided to start cutting down their forest and put animals instead. The close contact with diseases of the forest and the animals started bringing about new groups of diseases. In fact, the other countries in South America that started copying that policy got themselves also in trouble. And now you have all these new emerging infectious diseases all over South America, diseases that in the past were not there. Another example of these emerging infectious diseases is Africa. See, in Africa, there's a resurgence of a group of diseases by the name of hemorrhagic fevers. Do they sound nice, this group? No, it is not a nice group of disease. And the most famous of this one happens to be the Ebola. You heard about the famous Ebola, isn't it? Very infectious and very harmful. It's called hemorrhagic fever because you get these fevers and you start bleeding from every single orifice in your body. In fact, this is actually just from yesterday. I posted this on my Twitter yesterday. One of those diseases that was there in the list is called the Marburg virus. How dangerous is this bug? Well, it has a mortality of about 50%. 50% of the people that get this bug are going to die. And in Ghana, in Africa, they're having there some resurgence of this disease. So let me tell you how these diseases came about. Business people realized that in Africa, they had very nice forests with very nice quality of wood. So these business people started sending crews of workers deep into the forest to harvest and cut these trees. Now, put yourself in the shoes of these workers. Let's say you're one of those people there working there. You know, you have food with you that's going to last you 1 or 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, what are you going to eat? I mean, there's no plantations there. They can go and harvest some corn or something to eat. There's no business there. You know, you're deep in the forest that sells you food and so forth. So what these people started doing, they started killing different monkeys for food. This is what is called bush meat. And there has been identified 26 different types of monkeys that they are killing for food. There's a reason why Leviticus 11 says, don't eat these animals. God, in His wisdom, let us know that. And did you know, these people liked the taste of this. Then they went to their cities and told the people, hey, you should try the gorilla. It tastes really good. So the people in the cities now started eating these things. And this is very well documented how those viral hemorrhagic fevers, that is where the disease comes from eating that bush meat. And did you know that AIDS came also like that, originally? HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, lived originally in some of these monkeys. And here is Journal Science, one of the top journals in the world. Direct exposure to animal blood and secretions as a result of hunting, butchering, and other activities such as consumption of uncooked, contaminated meat. It's how this virus enters humans, and then later on, the promiscuous sexual behavior send this disease all over the place. But that's where it came originally. And sadly, every year we see more and more cases of AIDS, especially devastating southern part of Africa and East Asia. The numbers keep on climbing and climbing and climbing. Now, another source of emerging infectious diseases are what is called the wet markets. And it's not the most wise idea, because you have all these different animals that they were never together. Here you're putting them together. It's the perfect place for diseases to jump from one animal to another and from those diseases to mutate. So let's go and visit quickly one of those places. This is from Asia. These are bats. So what they do, they cut their wings and they do certain recipes with the bat and then other ones with the wings. You can see the wings there as he is cutting them, And then just on the next table from this one, you can see what he is preparing. He's chopping off a big boa type of snake there that they're going to eat. Again, Leviticus says don't eat these things. Did you know that bats have hands? They have them at the end of the wing. Look at that. And then, next door, look at what they're going to sell there to eat. Rats. They're going to be eating these rats. And then next to that rats, they have this feline there. I don't know if it's a wild cat or just a normal cat. Then pigs. See, every single thing Leviticus says don't eat, they have them there. Even more bats all over the place. And then very sad, outside, they have the dogs that they're going to eat. And there's the cage where they have the dogs. Now they're going to be killing soon. And same story with the cats. And down there, the other cats. And look at the things they eat. Look at this thing, Look at what they're going to eat. Man, it doesn't even sound yummy, isn't it? They say, man, I wish I could eat that, No, isn't it? There's a reason why Leviticus 11 says, don't eat these things. We get ourselves in big trouble by violation of that principle. Now, we don't have wet markets in America, but we have this. And this is a tremendous source of disease. This is not the way that God wants us to treat chickens. Just think about it. In this place, there's no sunlight there that can come and disinfect, all the germs and things that are being generated there. There's no fresh air that can come, and swipe all those, bacteria and viruses that are being generated there. You have so many chickens together that unless you give antibiotics to every single one of them, the whole thing is going to die. So you have these overly medicated animals, feeding them all these artificial foods. These chickens are not happy. They are under constant stress, and the stress causes immunosuppression, the perfect place to virus to change. In fact, we even know that the next pandemic is coming from this place. We even know the name. It's called a pandemic, avian pandemic influenza. It works like the Las Vegas game that people like to go there to waste their money. The one they pull the lever and then it shows 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. Boom, you win. Okay, that's what we're waiting for. We're just waiting for the perfect mutation of this virus, and believe me, it's gonna be nasty. We expect a mortality of about 30% or so. So, another source of disease in Asia is this animal. It's called the civet cat. I don't know if you ever heard about it. So the civet cat, they eat it, and they also make the world's most expensive coffee. They take coffee beans, feed them to this creature, and with the poopy of this creature, they make coffee. I don't know if they have ever heard about peppermint tea or something else, But the anal gland gives this special flavor they claim, and they pay big bucks for this, Well, COVID-19, the name of the virus that causes COVID-19, it's called SARS number 2. Why is it called SARS number 2? Because there was what? There was a SARS number 1. Well, this creature was the source of SARS number 1. In your head, so you know when this happened. It happened when we had President Obama in the White House. That's when SARS number 1 happened. And here is the journal Lancet, one of the top medical journals in the world, talking about this civet cat. A culinary choice in southern China led to a fatal infection in Hong Kong and subsequently to 8,000 cases of SARS and almost 1,000 deaths in 30 countries. Fortunately, this one they were able to contain it, but unfortunately SARS number 2 they were not, and that's the disaster that it caused. So that was the source of this problem. Another nasty bug is this other emerging infectious disease by the name of Streptococcus suis. This bug will go to your nervous system. It'll give you a nasty meningitis. Most people that get this bug are actually going to end up blind. It is a nasty bug. And here is the official report where this bug came from. Stress due to poor housing conditions, talking about the animals, such as overcrowding and inadequate ventilation, are risk factors for the development of a clinical apparent disease. And this is not the way we're supposed to treat pigs. They have these places where they have these cages, and they have these pigs their whole life there. Why they're being so mean to the pigs? Well, because if the pig does exercise, it will build muscle and it will make the meat hard. And who wants hard meat? So the consumers ask for this, the business people act on them. Another disease that came from pigs is this one that is called the Nepa Virus. Very nasty disease. Between 40 to 50% of the people that get this virus are going to die. In fact, they are afraid that they may use it for bioterrorism. You get this virus spread all over the place, man, you cause tremendous devastation all over the place. Where did it come from? Here is the official report. Without these largely intensively managed pig farms in Malaysia, it would have been extremely difficult for this virus to emerge. So there are things we can practically do to decrease the risk of being infected by some of these things. This is a very good study that they did. It cost $1 million to do this study. What they did, they were comparing the bacteria that live inside the digestive tracts of humans among those that eat chicken and beef that have been given antibiotics. When you eat this type of meat, you become also antibiotic resistant. And here are the results. Those people that eat these types of foods, notice how they had tremendous antibiotic resistance. Compared to those people that are following a plant-based diet, notice that none of them had this antibiotic resistance. So as you can see, our food choices actually are putting us at risk of certain of these diseases. 70% of all the antibiotics on planet Earth are given to animals today. So that's why it is causing tremendous antibiotic resistance. So in closing, let's see this in perspective. COVID-19 has killed millions. AIDS has also killed millions. Thousands have perished because of this Streptococcus suis. SARS had killed thousands. Nepa has killed hundreds. But this new influenza that I'm telling you, it's gonna be a nasty, nasty bug. Now, notice what it says in Counsels on Diet. The light given me is that it will not be very long before we shall have to give up any animal food. Even milk will have to be discarded. Disease is accumulating rapidly. And why is that? Because the curse of God is upon the earth. Why? Because man has cursed. So as we have changed our behavior and our morality, these had effects on all the things around us. Now, we need to leave these animals alone. And some people may say, Doctor, things are pretty nasty in the future. Yes, they are. But there were some disciples that were experts in boats, and they faced such a horrible storm that they thought that they were going to perish due to how bad the storm was. But they had an advantage. They had Jesus in the boat. And because Jesus was in the boat, the outcome was different. I believe we are in a time and age that I would encourage each one of us to invite Jesus in our boat. The storm is pretty bad. But if Jesus is in the boat, we know that we have His companion and His direction. Now, some of you may say, well, Doctor, but I cannot invite Jesus in my boat. I have not been behaving very well and so forth. Well, let me tell you this story. Let's say there are 7 brothers. 6 of them are doing wonderful. They have their jobs, they have their wives, and everything goes really well with them. But one of those 7 is having issues with addictions. One of those 7 cannot keep a job. One of those 7, his relationships keep on going sour over and over again. Question: the parents of these 7 children, who do they constantly think about? Do they think about those 6 ones that everything is going well with them? No. Who is waking them up in the middle of the night thinking, man, what can we do for this one? In the same way, if you are not doing good, Jesus is actually interested even more in you. And He is willing and able to help you. But because God is love, God cannot force Himself in your life. You need to grant Him permission for Him to come into your life, and then He can be the blessing that He wants to be in your life. So that's why, because Jesus can be in our boat, we can claim this promise of 2 Timothy 1:7, for God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. May God bless us. May we be able to experience that blessing of God as we commune, as we walk with Him day by day, even in this difficult world that we live in. God's will may be done in each of our lives. Thank you very much.